He thought it was a harmless invitation, a subtle way to show he had won. But what he didn't realize was that every move he made was already part of a much bigger plan. Hidden assets, buried lies, and secrets carefully collected over time are about to surface at the worst possible moment. For him. This isn't emotional revenge, it's calculated exposure. Because sometimes the most powerful move isn't anger, it's timing. And when truth arrives at the perfect moment, it doesn't just hurt, it destroys. Like and share to support more stories like this. Thanks for watching.
The envelope was made from a thick, creamy paper, the expensive kind my ex-husband, Garrett, always said we could never afford. But this wasn't a bill or some other reminder of how much I was struggling. It was an invitation to a wedding. Garrett was marrying Tessa, the woman he left me for 4 years ago. He actually had the nerve to ask me to come watch him get the happy ending he stole from me. A little note tucked inside said, "No hard feelings." No hard feelings about the affair, the brutal divorce, or the way he took everything, leaving me to rebuild my life on just $700 a month. I just sat in my tiny apartment, staring at that piece of paper for hours. I sat there in the silence while my twins were at school, my coffee turning cold in my hands. That is when my eyes found the date, June 15th, our wedding anniversary. He had actually chosen the very day we got married to marry her. In that single moment, I made a decision. I was going to that wedding, but I was not going to be the sad, broken woman he expected to see. I was going to remind him of everything he threw away, and I had 18 months of secrets on my side to help me do it. My name is Rebecca, and this is the story of how I arrived at my ex-husband's wedding on a billionaire's private jet, with our 2 children standing right next to me. I was going there to ruin his perfect day simply by telling the truth. So you will want to stick around, because he had no idea what was about to happen. The expensive invitation sat on Rebecca Hartwell's small kitchen counter. The apartment was completely, almost painfully silent. Her kids, Evan and Emma, were at school. Her coffee had been cold for an hour, but she had not moved at all. The invitation felt like it was mocking her. She would pick it up, stare at it, and then set it back down again. Her phone was right beside it. She could easily call her friend Diane. She thought about ripping the invitation into 1,000 tiny pieces and just pretending it never arrived. But instead, she opened her laptop. An email from a man named Julian was sitting in her inbox, still unread. She looked back at the invitation. Garrett Michael Sullivan and Tessa Marie Brightwell request the honor of your presence. Her hand began to shake, making the heavy cardstock tremble. Inside was a handwritten note in his familiar handwriting. It was the same writing from the love letters he once wrote her, and the same signature that was on their divorce papers 4 years earlier. "Becca," the note said, "I know this is probably strange, but I really hope you can come. The kids need to see that both of their parents are moving on and are happy. No hard feelings. Best, Garrett." No hard feelings. She read that phrase 3 different times, and it made less sense with each reading. No hard feelings for cheating on me, for the divorce, for taking almost everything and leaving me with only $700 a month while I only get to see my own children on the weekends. She checked the date again, just to make sure she was not imagining it. June 15th. The air caught in her throat. June 15th was their anniversary, the day they had gotten married 12 years ago. It was the day she had worn her grandmother's veil and promised to love him for the rest of her days. He had chosen that exact date to marry another woman. The invitation fell from her hand and landed face up on the counter. A memory suddenly washed over her. It was 4 years ago, almost to this very day. Garrett had come home from work early. She was in the kitchen, and the twins, only 4 years old at the time, were laughing as they built towers with their blocks and knocked them down. She was cooking his favorite dinner, spaghetti. He just stood there, in the doorway, loosened his tie, and looked at her with cold, empty eyes. "We have to talk," he said. Those 4 simple words shattered her entire world. I want a divorce. There was no explanation, no warning, no chance to even try to fix whatever was wrong. She remembered the wooden spoon dropping from her hand, splattering red sauce across the floor and all over her shirt. What? Why, Garrett? What are you talking about? He answered. I met someone else. Someone who gets me, who supports my career, someone who is not this. He waved his hand around at her, at the kitchen, at the life they had made together. Someone younger, someone prettier, someone who is not exhausted from raising 2 small children. She could only whisper one word. Who? He said, Tessa. Tessa, her own friend, the woman who had been a bridesmaid at their wedding, the same woman who had smiled and watched them renew their vows only 3 years before that. Rebecca shook her head, trying to push the painful memory away. But more memories came rushing in. She remembered the divorce hearings. Garrett's lawyer was a shark in a very expensive suit. The lawyer Rebecca could afford had just graduated from law school. Garrett was allowed to keep everything, the house, the savings, and all the retirement money. His lawyer argued that because Rebecca was a stay-at-home mom, she did not have a career, an income, or any assets of her own. The lawyer claimed that being a mother was her choice. So the court gave her $700 a month in child support and visitation, with her twins on the weekends. That was it. The judge did not even make eye contact with her when he read the final decision. Rebecca blinked, and she was back in her kitchen, holding her cold cup of coffee. It had been 4 years of barely getting by. She had to work 2 different jobs just to pay the rent. She made secret visits to the local food bank so her kids would not find out. She could not afford to give them the birthday parties they deserved. And for 4 years, Garrett's mother, Patricia, would call just to say hurtful things, like if you had just taken better care of yourself, he never would have left you. It had been 4 years of missing bedtime stories, school plays, and the day each of her children lost their first tooth. It had been 4 long years of feeling like she was slowly disappearing. She picked up her phone and started scrolling through old photos. She stopped at a picture from her wedding day. She was only 27 years old, wearing a beautiful white dress with flowers in her hair, and her smile was so wide it probably made her cheeks ache. She did not even recognize that woman anymore. That woman had so many dreams. That woman believed in happily ever after. That woman, she thought with a bitter taste in her mouth, was a complete fool. Rebecca put her phone down and looked at the invitation one more time. No hard feelings. A sharp, burning pain twisted deep inside her chest. Her laptop chimed with a new notification. It was another email from Julian. She opened it. Becca, I know you need time, and I completely understand, but I am always here for you when you are ready. Always, Jay. Julian. He was so kind and patient. She had met him 18 months ago in a coffee shop when she had accidentally spilled her entire latte on his laptop. Instead of being upset, he just laughed it off. She had no idea he was a billionaire tech genius until their 5th date, when a stranger recognized him. Julian understood that she needed to keep their relationship private, and that her ex-husband could not know about him. He understood why the twins could not meet him yet. Julian never complained or pushed her for more. He just waited patiently. Suddenly, the doorbell rang, making Rebecca jump and spill the last of her cold coffee on the counter. She was not expecting anyone. She looked through the peephole and saw a man wearing a dark suit. He had a serious expression and was holding a package that was stamped with the word confidential. Her heart began to race. She slowly opened the door. "Are you Rebecca Hartwell?" he asked in a flat voice. "Yes," she answered. "Please sign for this." She signed the electronic pad, and he gave her the package, turned around, and walked away without another word. Rebecca locked the door, her eyes fixed on the heavy, official-looking package in her hands. There was no return address on it. She opened it with careful fingers. Inside, she discovered a stack of documents, airline tickets, and a handwritten note. You do not have to hide us anymore, it read. Let me be there for you. Let them see you the way that I see you. You deserve to walk into that room as if you own the whole world, because in my world, you do. Always, Jay. Tears filled her eyes. Underneath the note were stacks of legal papers. She looked through them with a trembling hand. They were financial records, bank statements, and property deeds, all with Garrett's name on them. There were secret accounts she never knew existed, money he had hidden during their divorce, and properties that were secretly listed under his mother's name. There were records of business deals designed to hide how much money he was actually making. It was clear, undeniable proof that he had lied about everything. At the very bottom of the pile, there was another note, this one from a man named Marcus Caldwell, who had been Garrett's business partner. It said, Mrs. Hartwell, I should have spoken up 4 years ago. I was a coward. I kept a copy of everything. I am so sorry it took me this long to do the right thing. This is more than enough evidence to reopen your case. Rebecca collapsed onto the kitchen floor, the papers spreading out all around her. Julian had been investigating Garrett. For how long? He had been quietly building this case for her, never saying a single word. Her phone buzzed with a text message from Diane. Are you okay? I have not heard from you in a couple of days. Do you want to grab lunch? Rebecca looked at the message from her friend, then at the wedding invitation on her counter, and finally at the proof of Garrett's lies scattered across her floor. She typed back a reply. Can you come over to my place right now? I really need you. 3 little dots appeared on her screen almost immediately, and then a message came through. I am on my way. Be there in 15 minutes. Rebecca pushed herself up and carefully gathered all the papers, placing them back inside the package. She started a fresh pot of coffee, making it extra strong, just the way Diane liked it. Then she picked up the wedding invitation one last time. No hard feelings. For the first time in 4 very long years, Rebecca Hartwell smiled. But it was not a happy smile. It was a promise. It was 12 minutes later when Diane flew through the front door. What is going on? Are the kids all right? She asked. Then she stopped, her eyes fixed on the look on Rebecca's face. What did he do this time? Rebecca just held out the invitation, not saying a single word. Diane read it once, and then she read it a second time. Her face went from worried to confused, and then to absolute fury. He invited you to his wedding? On what would have been your anniversary? He did, Rebecca answered. That total... Diane stopped herself, taking a long, slow breath. Okay. And the little note? No hard feelings? Has he lost his mind completely? I think he actually means it, Rebecca said quietly. Of course he does, Diane said with a bitter laugh. He is Garrett Sullivan, after all. The man who can do nothing wrong. She slapped the invitation down on the kitchen counter. You have to tell me you are not really thinking of going, Diane said. I just do not know, Di. I honestly do not know. Diane studied her friend's expression. She could always tell when something more was going on. There is another piece to this, is not there? What is it? Rebecca passed her the large envelope. Diane started looking through the papers inside. She began reading slowly, but then she started flipping through them faster and faster. With every page she turned, her eyes opened wider. Oh my goodness, she breathed. He kept all of this hidden from you when you got divorced? It looks that way, Rebecca replied. And Julian is the one who found all of it. Julian? Your Julian? Diane asked. He is not my Julian, Becca. We are not... It is a complicated situation. It does not look all that complicated from where I am standing, Diane said. Rebecca poured 2 mugs of coffee and joined her at the small kitchen table. It was the table that always wobbled because one of the legs was a little too short. I met him 18 months ago. It was at that little coffee place on 7th Street. I accidentally spilled my entire latte on his laptop. You already told me this part, Diane reminded her. He just laughed it off. We began to talk, and he was just so nice, and I had a great sense of humor. He was completely focused on our conversation in a way that Garrett never was. Rebecca clutched the warm mug in her hands. We began to see each other. It was casual in the beginning. We would just get coffee and then maybe dinner. But after a while, I really started to fall for him. And he fell for you too, Diane added. Yes, he fell for me too, Rebecca confessed. But I could not tell a soul, not you, not my children, not anyone. Because if Garrett ever discovered I was seeing someone, especially a man who had some money, he would have dragged me right back into court. He would have fought to pay less child support, claiming that I clearly did not need his help anymore. Diane's face hardened. She said that was exactly the kind of thing he would pull. So, we hid our relationship. We kept it completely secret. We never posted anything on social media or went out together in public. It was only the two of us, always behind closed doors, and Julian was fine with it. He told me he understood that I needed to protect the twins, and he promised he would wait for me. Becca's voice shook slightly. He has been waiting for 18 long months, Diane, and I just keep pulling back. I keep pushing him away because I am so terrified of what could happen. I am terrified of everything. I am scared he will get tired of waiting and leave. I am scared he will decide I am more trouble than I am worth. I am scared he will end up being just like Garrett. She just shook her head. I know it is not fair to Julian. He has never done a single thing to make me doubt him, but I just cannot seem to shake this feeling. Diane reached across the little table and gently took Becca's hand. You do realize that you are not the one with the problem here, do you not? Do I know that? Garrett conditioned you to think that you were. For years, he slowly chipped away at your self-confidence, making you feel insignificant. He made you believe that you should just be thankful he was with you at all. But all of it was a lie, Becca. Every last word he said. Becca slowly pulled her hand back and walked over to the kitchen window. Outside, everything looked so completely normal. People were out walking their dogs. Kids were riding up and down the street on their bikes. He always said, I did not have any ambition. He told me I had let myself go, that I was no fun anymore. He was cheating on you with your own friend, Becca. His opinion is worthless. But what if there was some truth to it? What if I really did let myself go? What if I became a boring person? Becca turned away from the window to look at her sister. I was so focused on the twins, on making sure the house was perfect, on trying to be the perfect wife. Maybe I did lose track of being an interesting person. Maybe I just forgot who I was. Stop it. Stop what? Stop defending him. Stop finding reasons for his terrible behavior. Stop acting like you did anything at all to deserve what he did to you. I am not doing any of that. Yes, you are. You are doing it right now. Diane got up and walked over to her sister. You have to listen to what I am saying. Garrett Sullivan is a liar, a cheater, and a complete and total fraud. And I mean that in the most literal way. The evidence is sitting right on that table. He stole your money. He hid his own money from you. He literally broke the law. And you are here in this kitchen, worrying that you are not pretty enough for a man like that? Becca's eyes began to sting, and she blinked hard to keep the tears from falling. I look at the woman in our wedding photos, and I have no idea who she is. I do not know what happened to her. She is still right here. She has just been pushed down for so many years that she forgot how to stand back up. The tears finally came, streaming down her face, hot and fast and filled with anger. Diane put her arms around her. Becca cried on her sister's shoulder, letting go of 4 years of pain she had kept locked inside. I am just so incredibly tired, Diane. I am so tired of this constant struggle, of pretending to everyone that I am doing just fine. I am tired of putting on a happy face when it feels like I am slowly drowning. I know you are. I work 2 different jobs, and I still cannot find enough money to buy the kids new shoes. I cannot even think about taking them on a vacation. It feels like I cannot give them anything at all. You give them your love. That is so much more than Garrett ever gave them. But is that really enough? It is everything to them. They stood just like that in the center of the small kitchen until Becca's crying started to slow down. When she finally stopped, Becca pulled back, wiped her face, and managed a small laugh. I think I got snot on your shirt. I have 3 kids. I have had things much worse than that on my shirts. They went back to the wobbly table, and Diane poured them some more coffee. So, what is your next move? Diane asked. About the wedding invitation? About Julian? About this entire mess? I have no idea. It seems like I have two choices, does it not? I can bring all of this evidence to the court, turn Garrett's world completely upside down, and finally get the money that I should have gotten in the first place. Becca paused for a moment. Or I can simply go to that wedding. I can make him see the woman he was foolish enough to throw away. I can show him that I am no longer a broken person. You know, those two choices are not mutually exclusive. You have the power to do both of them. Do you really think so? Of course, you give all that evidence to your lawyer, let him file all the paperwork, and while the legal system is doing its thing, you walk into his wedding with a billionaire on your arm. You show him exactly what he lost. That just seems so spiteful. It is. Be spiteful. He deserves spiteful. To be honest, he deserves a lot worse than that. Becca laughed, a real laugh this time. It sounded strange, like something she had not used in a long time. Julian wants to be right there with me. He has already sent us all plane tickets. Wait, plane tickets? You mean more than just one? For a private plane, his own plane. He wants to fly all of us there. Me, the twins, and you, if you are willing to come with us. Diane's mouth fell open. Your boyfriend has his own private plane? He is not my boyfriend, Becca corrected her, but then she let out a long sigh. Okay, you are right. My boyfriend has a private plane, and you have been sitting here, actually worried that you are not an interesting person? My dear, you are dating a man who owns his own airplane. You have basically hit the jackpot for interesting people. Becca could not stop a smile from spreading across her face. He wants to finally meet the twins, for real this time. He says that we have been hiding our relationship for way too long. He is not wrong about that. But what if they do not end up liking him? And what if they really love him? That might be even scarier. Diane just shook her head at her. You cannot protect them from every single thing in the world. And you cannot protect yourself from every single thing either. At some point, you just have to close your eyes and take a leap of faith. Becca looked down at the invitation one more time, then at the pile of legal papers, and then finally at her sister. He sent that invitation because he is convinced I am still that same broken woman. He wants his new wife, Tessa, to look at me and see how much I am struggling. He wants everyone there to see what a huge upgrade he got. Then you have to go and prove him wrong. But how can I possibly do that? You walk in there, looking like $1 million, with a man who truly adores you by your side, and with your two children who love you more than anything. You walk into that place as if you own the entire world. Because you know what, Becca? You do. You always have. You just forgot for a little while. Becca stood up and went back to the window, staring down at the street below. Somewhere out in the world, Garrett was probably busy with his final wedding plans, likely laughing to himself about the cruel invitation he sent. He had absolutely no idea what was coming for him. Okay, Becca said. Her voice was quiet, but it was filled with a new strength. Okay, what? Okay, I will do it. I am going to that wedding. I am going to take Julian with me. I will take the kids, and I am going to walk into that party like I own the whole building. A massive smile broke out on Diane's face. Now that is the sister I remember. But I need to do one thing first. What is that? Becca pulled out her phone, opened her text messages, and found Julian's name. She typed out her message with slow, deliberate fingers. I am ready. Let us do this. All of it. She was done hiding. Her finger hovered over the screen, then pressed send before her courage could disappear. A reply buzzed back in less than a minute. I was hoping you would say that. When can I see you? For the first time in a long while, a real smile spread across Becca's face. Tonight. Come over tonight. It is time for you to meet my sister, she added, and soon you will meet my kids. The response was immediate. I will be there at 7 o'clock. Diane read the text over her shoulder. Tonight? You are really going to introduce him tonight? No more waiting, Becca said. No more hiding. If I am going to do this, I am doing it completely. Good. Diane said firmly. It is about damn time. Side by side, they cleaned the kitchen and tucked the stack of evidence into a very safe place. They used a magnet to hang the wedding invitation on the refrigerator. It served as a reminder. It felt like a challenge. Just as Diane was about to head out, she paused at the door. Becca? Yeah? I am so proud of you. I hope you know that. For what? For getting through all of this, Diane said. For deciding to fight back. For finally remembering the person you really are. The door clicked shut, and Diane was gone. Becca was alone again in her quiet apartment. This time, however, the silence felt different. It was not empty or suffocating like before. It felt calm and full of purpose. The invitation remained on the refrigerator door. June 15th. That gave her 2 months. 2 months to prepare, to lay out their plans to become someone new. 2 months for Garrett to enjoy thinking he had won. And after that, she was going to show him exactly how wrong he was. I was not the one with the problem. I see that now. But for so many years, I believed every single word he said about me. 7 o'clock came around much sooner than Becca expected. She had spent the whole afternoon cleaning her apartment. It was not even messy, but the act of cleaning always helped her feel grounded when her world was spinning. She scrubbed the bathroom floor until it shined, vacuumed the living room, and then organized the twins' closet. Red shirt, blue shirt, red shirt, blue shirt. She folded, stacked, and repeated the motion. The simple, steady rhythm helped to quiet her anxious thoughts. At 6:45, she caught her reflection in the bedroom mirror. She had on a pair of jeans and a comfortable sweater. Her hair was down, and she wore just a little makeup. She looked completely normal. Inside, she felt anything but normal. Her phone vibrated with a new text message from Julian. Parking now. Be right up. Her heart did a tiny flip inside her chest. She placed a hand over it, taking a slow, deep breath. This is just Julian. Kind Julian. Patient Julian. There is nothing to be afraid of. Just then, the doorbell rang, and she opened it, and he was standing there. He was dressed simply, in dark jeans and a casual shirt. He could have been any other man if it were not for his eyes. His eyes always seemed to look straight into her soul. Hi, he said softly. Hi, for a second. They just stood there, feeling as awkward as a couple of teenagers. He held up a bottle of wine. I brought this. I hope it is okay. I was not sure what kind you liked. She gently pulled him inside by his shirt and gave him a deep kiss. The wine bottle dropped from his hand as he caught her, returning the kiss with just as much feeling. When they finally broke apart, both of them were slightly breathless. Hi, she said again, a little dazed. He let out that warm, genuine laugh that always made her heart feel full. Hi yourself? They bent down to pick up the bottle, which had miraculously survived the fall, and walked into the kitchen. Becca's hand trembled a little as she poured them each a glass. You are nervous, Julian observed gently. Yes. Do not be. It is only me. That is precisely why I am nervous. He looked at her, his brow furrowed in confusion. I do not understand. Because this is finally real, she explained. We are not sneaking around anymore. This is not just secret dinners and stolen moments. This is real life. Diane knows about you. The kids will know soon, and after that, everyone will know. And that scares you? He asked. It terrifies me. He set his wine glass on the counter and took both of her hands into his. Becca, look at me. She lifted her head to meet his incredible eyes. I am not him, he said softly but firmly. I know you are afraid that I will turn into him, that I will leave you, or that I will hurt you. I promise you, I will not do that. I am not Garrett. You say that now, she whispered. Then I will say it to you every single day for the rest of our lives, he promised, if that is what it takes for you to hear it. She wanted to believe him more than anything. He told me he loved me too. He said it on our wedding day. He said it when we renewed our vows. He said it on every anniversary we ever had. He said all the perfect things, and he left anyway. I know, Julian said quietly. So how can I possibly trust that you will not do the exact same thing? Julian was silent for a long moment, thinking. Then he said something that completely surprised her. You do not. Not yet. Trust is not something you can just give away. It has to be earned, and I have not earned yours yet. But I will. I am going to earn it, every single day, until you finally believe me. Her throat felt tight with emotion. What if that takes years? Then it will take years. But what if I am just too broken? What if I can never really trust anyone again? Then we will figure that out together, he said, but you are not broken, Becca. You are not a destructive person. You are a hurt person. There is a huge difference. His words made the tears start all over again. She was so tired of constantly crying. He gathered her into his arms and simply let her cry into his chest. He did not try to solve anything for her. He just held her. When she finally pulled back, she managed a weak, watery laugh. I am soaking your shirt. I have more shirts. You know, we are starting to make a habit of this. First, it was coffee all over your laptop, and now I am crying all over your shirt. I am just a walking disaster. You are a perfect person. I am so far from perfect. To me, you are. She looked up at him in that moment. This man, this kind, patient, unbelievable man. You had Garrett investigated. You found all of that evidence. You put together a whole case against him, and you never even told me. He had the good grace to look a little ashamed. I did it, he admitted. I am sorry. I really should have talked to you first. So, why did you not? Because I knew you would tell me not to do it, he said. You would have insisted on not making a fuss. You would have tried to protect him, even though he does not deserve it. So I just went ahead and did it anyway. That is unbelievably arrogant of you. Yes, it is. I am sorry. Do not apologize. I am not mad. She took a deep breath. I am grateful, and I am completely terrified, and I am very confused. He's everything Garrett always told me I was not good enough for. He is successful and generous, and he makes me feel like I am the most amazing person he has ever met. That is what terrifies me. Why? Because what is going to happen when you finally realize that I am not? What happens when you see that Garrett was right all along? That I am boring and ordinary and not worth all of this trouble? Julian cupped her face gently in his hands. Becca, listen to me very carefully. You are not boring. You are not ordinary. You survived 4 years of absolute misery and came out of it still a kind person, still a caring mother, and still willing to fight for your children. That is extraordinary. That is nothing less than heroic. I do not feel very heroic, she whispered. Heroes almost never do. The doorbell rang again, making Becca jump. That has to be Diane. Should I go hide in the other room? No, he said gently. No more hiding. Remember? She opened the door to reveal her sister. Diane's eyes went from Becca to Julian and back again, and a huge smile broke out on her face. Am I interrupting anything? She asked. Yes, Becca answered simply. Good. I was eager to finally meet the mysterious billionaire boyfriend. Julian extended his hand. Julian Ashford, it is a real pleasure to meet you. Diane shook his hand, studying his face for a moment before turning back to Becca with a decisive nod. Okay, I approve. You cannot approve of him after only 30 seconds, Becca protested. Just watch me, Diane said. He has kind eyes, and he made you smile. That is more than Garrett did in 10 years. Approved. Julian laughed. That is the fastest character assessment I have ever received. I am an efficient person, Diane replied, pouring herself a glass of wine. So, let's talk about this wedding. What is our strategy? They all sat down around Becca's wobbly kitchen table and started to lay out their plan. I believe we should all go, Julian suggested. Becca, you and the children, and you as well, Diane, if you would like to come. Oh, I am absolutely coming, Diane declared. I would not miss this for the entire world. But we need to handle this smartly, Julian continued. Garrett has no idea I exist, or that we are together. So when we make our entrance, it needs to have a major impact. What kind of impact? Becca asked. A private jet, Julian said. That is the first step. We arrive in style. We will make a statement before we even walk through the door. Diane grinned from ear to ear. I really like the way you think. But that is not even the most important part, Julian said, pulling out his phone. He turned the screen so they could see it. This is... Becca's eyes widened as she read the information. You are planning to show this to Tessa's family at the wedding? Not at the wedding itself. After. During the reception. We will do it quietly. Her father deserves to know what kind of man he is about to invest his money in. Tessa's family has money? Diane asked. A lot of it. And Garrett's business is sinking fast. He has been taking money from the company and hiding his losses. Her family is about to give him $1 million based on financial reports that are completely fake. If we do not say anything, they will lose every last cent. Becca slowly shook her head in disbelief. So this is not just about getting revenge, she realized. This is about protecting them. That is one reason, yes. But this is really about revealing the truth. Garrett has been feeding lies to everyone around him. He lied to you, to Tessa, to her entire family, and even his own business partners. It is time for someone to finally make him stop. Who else has seen this evidence? Marcus Caldwell knows. He is Garrett's partner in business. He was the one who collected all of this paperwork for us. He wants to help. He feels awful for staying silent while you were going through the divorce. I remember Marcus. He always struck me as a good man. He did seem uncomfortable around Garrett at times. He was. He still is. Now he wants a chance to help make things right. They talked for hours, crafting plans, and then changing them again and again. By the time Diane was ready to head home, it was far past midnight. Julian got up as well, getting ready to leave. Stay, Becca said, her voice barely a whisper. He turned to look at her. Are you sure? No, but I want you to stay anyway. So he stayed. They lay next to each other in her small bed. They were not touching, just sharing the same quiet space. Tell me about the first time you saw me, Becca whispered in the dark. It was at that little coffee shop. Yes. You came rushing in, your hair was a mess, and your purse was falling from your shoulder. You asked for a large black coffee with no sugar. The barista said something funny, and you let out this huge laugh. It was not a polite little chuckle. It was just a completely real sound. I remember thinking to myself, I need to know that person, the kind of person who can laugh just like that. And then I immediately spilled my coffee all over your computer. It was the single best coffee spill of my life. She turned in the bed to face him. Why me? You could have any woman you want. You could date models, actresses, or chief executive officers. Why a broke single mom in a coffee shop? Because you are authentic. When I am with you, I do not feel like Julian Ashford, the billionaire tech wizard. I just feel like Julian. Just me. And for some reason you seem to like that person. I do like you. That is the entire problem. How is that a problem? Because liking you means I would have to trust you. And trusting you means I would be risking everything. I honestly do not know if I could survive being broken like that a second time. He rolled onto his side to face her. In that case, do not worry about forever. Just focus on this single moment, right now. Are you all right now? Yes. Then that is the only thing that matters. We will figure out tomorrow when it gets here. And then she kissed him. It was a soft and gentle kiss, full of both promise and fear, with just a little bit of hope mixed in. When she finally drifted off to sleep, she dreamed about weddings and fancy cream-colored invitations. She dreamed of walking into a room full of people who all thought she was weak, and instead, she walked in feeling powerful. I have a choice to make. I can bring this evidence to the court and drag him through a nasty fight, or I can simply show up at his wedding and let him see exactly what he threw away. Both choices feel like justice, but neither one of them feels like it is truly enough. The next 2 weeks passed by in a blur. Becca filed the necessary papers, gave the evidence to her lawyer, and started the process of reopening her divorce settlement. Her attorney, an incredibly sharp woman named Jennifer Martinez, looked over every document with eyes that grew wider and wider. This is huge. This is very, very huge. Where did you get this information? From a friend. That is some friend you have. This is not only enough to reopen your case, but it might be enough for criminal charges. Is that a path you want to go down? Becca thought about it. She pictured Garrett in handcuffs, in a courtroom, inside a prison cell. She once believed that was exactly what she wanted, but as she sat there in Jennifer's office, she realized something had changed. She did not really care what happened to Garrett anymore. She just wanted what was rightfully hers. Let us start by reopening the case and fighting for a fair settlement. We can discuss criminal charges down the road. Jennifer nodded. That is a smart decision. We will take it one step at a time. How long do you expect this to take? Months? Maybe a year? These kinds of cases can drag on, especially when the other side is prepared to fight. And Garrett will absolutely fight this. This will make him look bad. Very, very bad. Good. Jennifer smiled. I like you. Let us go dismantle him. Becca left the office feeling lighter and so much stronger. She had taken the first step, which was always the hardest one. Now, it was time to take the second. Julian wanted to properly meet the twins. The very thought of it filled her with dread. She spoke to them carefully, sitting them both down after dinner one night. They were 8 years old now, certainly old enough to understand. Mom, you are making that serious face, Emma said. Did we do something wrong? No, sweetie. No one is in trouble. I just need to talk to you about something important. Evan put his tablet down. Is this about Dad? No. Well, sort of. But it is mainly about me. Okay. They both looked concerned. I have a friend. A very close friend. He is someone I have been spending some time with, and he would really like to meet you both, if that is all right with you. The room was silent. Then Evan asked the one question she had been fearing. Is he your boyfriend? Because Dad told us that you will never find anyone as good as him. The words hit her like a punch to the gut. Becca fought to keep her expression calm and neutral. Your dad told you that? Yeah? He said you are too... I forget. He used some big words I did not get, but he said that no man would ever want to date you. Emma nodded her head. He said you stopped taking care of yourself. He said that is why he had to leave, because you got lazy. Becca's hands curled into tight fists in her lap, hidden beneath the table where the children could not see. She had a powerful urge to scream, to fly into a complete rage. Instead, she took one slow, deep breath. Your dad is mistaken. I did not get lazy. I was busy taking care of you two, and that was incredibly hard work. It was harder than any other job I have ever had. We know that, Emma said immediately. We know you work super hard, and about my friend, his name is Julian. He's very kind, and he makes me laugh, and yes, he is very special to me. But I need you to understand one thing. This is extremely important. They both waited. No one is ever going to take the place of your dad. He will always be your father, and nothing can ever change that. But I am also allowed to be happy. I am allowed to have someone in my life who cares about me. Is that okay? Evan looked over at Emma, and they had one of their silent twin conversations. Finally, Evan spoke up. Does he make you smile? Yes. Like real smiles? Not the fake kind you do when Dad starts talking about Tessa? Becca's heart hurt. They noticed. Of course, they had noticed everything. Real smiles. Then I guess it is fine. Emma nodded. When can we meet him? This weekend, on Saturday. We can all go to the park and maybe get some ice cream. We will just have fun. There is no pressure at all. If you do not like him, we will handle it. But I would be really happy if you just gave him a chance, okay? They said in unison. That night, long after the kids were asleep, Becca called Diane. He told them I was lazy. He said I let myself go. He told them no one would ever want me. That absolute... Diane stopped herself and took a calming breath. He said those things to his own 8-year-old children. That is what he said. Becca, you need to write all of this down. You have to tell your lawyer. This is called parental alienation. You can use it against him. I know, and I will. But for right now, I just really had to say it to someone. Because if I keep it inside, I think I might just scream. Then scream. I will wait. So Becca pushed her face into a pillow and screamed. It was a loud, long, furious sound. When she finally ran out of air, Diane spoke calmly. Do you feel any better? A little. Good. Now I need you to listen to me. Julian meeting your kids this weekend is a really big step. It is the right move, but you have to prepare yourself. Ready for what? For them to fall in love with him. Because if they start to love him, and then he decides to leave, it will destroy them. It will destroy you. So you have to be 100% sure that he is serious about this. I am sure. Are you? Because just 2 weeks ago, you wanted to hide him from them forever. Becca did not say anything. I am so scared. Every single day, I wake up expecting him to see that I am not good enough, that he has made a huge mistake, that he could easily find someone so much better. Those are Garrett's words bouncing around in your head. That is not reality. How am I supposed to tell the difference anymore? By looking at the facts. Has Julian ever, even once, made you feel small? No. Has he ever criticized you, or put you down, or made you feel like you were beneath him? No. Has he ever pushed you, or rushed you, or asked for anything you were not ready to give? No. He has been completely patient. Then you have to trust that. Trust the proof that is right in front of your face, not the ghost that is living inside your head. Saturday came much faster than she wanted. Becca changed her outfit 4 times. Nothing felt right. She finally landed on a simple and casual outfit with jeans and a soft blue t-shirt. Her new boyfriend, Julian, was supposed to pick them up at 10 o'clock in the morning. He showed up in a normal car, not a flashy sports car, just a standard sport utility vehicle. The twins got into the back seat, their shoulders tense and their faces unreadable. Hi, Julian said, sounding a little nervous himself. I am Julian. It is a real pleasure to meet you both. The car was filled with silence. Then Emma asked, How much money do you have? Emma! Becca twisted around in her seat. You cannot ask people a question like that. Why not? I just want to know. Julian let out a genuine laugh. Not a nervous one, but a laugh of pure enjoyment. That is a very fair question. I have more money than I will ever need, and still less than I want. That is not a real answer, Evan said from where he was sitting. You are absolutely right. It is not. The true answer is a little complicated, but the simple version is this. I have enough to be comfortable. I have enough to help the people I love. It is not enough to fix all the world's problems, but it is enough to make a small difference. Evan considered that for a second. Are you trying to buy us? My dad's girlfriend does that. She brings us gifts because she thinks it will make us like her. I'm not trying to buy your affection, Julian said in a gentle voice. I am just trying to get to know you, and I hope you will take the time to get to know me too. If it turns out you do not like me, that is perfectly okay, but I really hope you will give me a fair chance. They went to the park in his car. It was not some big fancy place, just the small park in their neighborhood with a few swings and a slide. Julian pushed Emma on the swings for a while. He shot some hoops with Evan. He sat next to Becca on a park bench and did not even make a move to hold her hand in front of her children. He was giving them their space, giving them time, and giving them the room they needed to adjust to him. After about an hour had passed, Emma came running over to him. Julian, can you push me even higher? Becca felt a knot tighten in her chest. Emma had used his actual name, not Mom's friend, but just Julian. For lunch, he took them to the children's favorite pizza place. It was not anything special, but before long, they were all laughing and talking, feeling just like a normal family. Evan told Julian everything about his math class and described how much he loved to discover patterns hidden in numbers. Emma showed him her newest art project, which was a drawing of a dragon that breathed different colors of fire based on its mood. Julian listened to them, and he really paid attention. He asked intelligent questions and remembered all the little details they shared. When they arrived back at the apartment, the twins raced inside to play. Julian and Becca stood beside his car. "Your kids are amazing," he said in a quiet voice. "They seem to like you." I really like them," he answered. "But what if they get too attached? What if you decide to—" He leaned in and gave her a gentle kiss, silencing her worries before she could even finish. "I'm not going anywhere. I am here to stay. I am completely serious about this," he went on. "Please stop waiting for me to leave." "I am really trying," she told him. "Well, try harder," he whispered. She let out a laugh and kissed him back. "Okay then. I will try harder." That evening, long after Julian had driven home, Emma crept into Becca's bed. "Mom?" "Yes, sweetheart?" "I like Julian. He is very nice. I'm so glad you think so. Is he going to be around more often? Would you be okay with that?" Emma gave it some thought. "Yes, I think so. He is not trying to be dad. He is just Julian, and that is fine." Becca pulled her daughter in for a hug, smelling the sweet strawberry scent of her hair. "I love you, Emmy. I love you too, Mom." The next morning, Evan came to her while Emma was distracted by the television. "Mom, is it okay if I ask you something?" "You can always ask me anything." "Are you and Julian going to get married?" "I do not know, honey. We have not discussed that." "Why are you asking?" "Because if you do, does that mean we will have to call him Dad?" "No, sweetheart, never. You already have a dad. Julian would just be Julian. He would be another adult in your life, who cares about you, but he would not be your dad. He will never be your dad, unless that is something you wanted far in the future." Evan nodded, and she could see the relief wash over his face. "Okay, because Dad can be mean sometimes, but he is still our dad. I do not want a new one. You will never have to have a new one. But Julian is okay," Evan said. "He actually listened to me when I talked about my math stuff. Dad usually just zones out." "Yes, I have noticed that about him," Becca said in a soft voice. "So, yeah, I guess he can stick around." Becca wrapped her serious, thoughtful son in a hug. "I love you, Ev. I love you too." 2 weeks after that, Garrett's name flashed on her phone. Becca just stared at it. They had not spoken in 6 weeks. He only ever called when there was a problem. She finally took a breath and answered. "Hello, Becca." "Hi, I am sorry to bother you," he said, his voice smooth and full of a confidence that was completely fake. "What is it you need, Garrett?" "I was just calling to check in about the wedding. I wanted to make sure you were still planning on coming. Tess has been asking about you. I will be there." "Great. That is just great. And I want you to know, I realize that money is tight. The invitation says formal wear, but if you have to wear something simpler, that is completely okay. No one is going to judge you." Her anger started to build, slowly but surely. "I will be dressed appropriately." "Of course you will. I was not trying to suggest. I just meant—" "I know exactly what you meant, Garrett." A long, awkward silence hung on his end of the line. "Well, okay then. I will see you on the 15th. See you then?" She ended the call and immediately picked her phone back up to send a text to her sister, Diane. "He just called to let me know it is okay if I show up in a cheap dress." Diane's reply came back instantly. "Oh, he is going to be so sorry he did that." Then, Becca sent a text to Julian. "Are you completely sure about this? About doing all of this?" His answer came back in just a few seconds. "I have never been more certain of anything in my life." "Even the private jet?" she typed. "Especially the private jet." A smile spread across her face as she put her phone down. She glanced at the calendar hanging on the wall and counted the days. There were 4 weeks until the wedding. 4 weeks until Garrett Sullivan was going to learn the biggest lesson of his life. She did the one thing she always did when she felt overwhelmed. She started reorganizing the kitchen drawers at midnight. Forks, knives, and spoons. She was creating order out of the chaos. 2 weeks before the wedding, her entire world shifted. Becca was at home, working on her morning data entry job. Her phone started to ring. The caller ID said it was the school. Her heart stopped beating for a second. The school only called when something was terribly wrong. "Miss Hartwell, this is Principal Morrison. I am calling you about Evan." Is he okay? Is he hurt? No, no. It is nothing like that. But there was an incident here today during lunch. I was hoping you could come in. She was at the school in 20 minutes. Evan was sitting in a chair in the principal's office. His lip was split and bleeding, and his knuckles were scraped raw. A different boy was sitting on the other side of the room, crying. What is going on? Becca asked, her voice shaking just a little. Principal Morrison let out a sigh. The boys got into a fight. Evan hit Tyler. Evan is not a hitter, Becca said without hesitation. I know that. That is the reason I called you first, instead of just giving him a suspension. But he did hit Tyler. He hit him very hard. We think Tyler's nose might be broken. Becca looked at her son, her quiet and gentle boy, who liked to arrange his toys by their color. Why? She asked him in a soft voice. Evan just stared down at the floor. He said something. What did he say to you? He said that you were a gold digger, that you were only dating a rich man for his money. He said everyone knows we are broke and that you are desperate and you are probably... He trailed off. I cannot say the other words. They were bad words. The other boy's mother suddenly burst into tears. Tyler, why on earth would you say something so horrible? Tyler sniffled. Dad said it. He said it last night. He said Garrett Sullivan's ex-wife is dating some billionaire now, and that everyone knows she is just trying to get his money. He said it at the dinner table. I was just repeating what I heard. The room became completely still. Becca's world narrowed down to a single point. Who is your father? His name is Mark Richardson. He works at the same company as Mr. Sullivan. Of course he did. It all made perfect sense. Garrett had been telling everyone. She knelt down in front of Evan and gently held his face in her hands. You were defending me. He was telling lies about you. I know he was, but we do not hit people, not even when they tell lies. But he... No, I understand that you were very angry. I know that you just wanted to protect me, but violence is never the right answer. Tears started to well up in Evan's eyes. I am sorry. I know you are, sweetie. She pulled him into a hug and held on to him tightly. But you need to apologize to Tyler, and you have to accept whatever punishment Principal Morrison thinks is fair. They managed to work things out. Evan said he was sorry, and Tyler apologized too. Both of the boys ended up with detention. Evan was very quiet in the car on the ride home. How did Dad find out? He finally said. About you and Julian? I have no idea. I really thought we were being discreet. Are you angry with me? At you? No, never. At this whole situation, I am furious. When they walked into their apartment, Emma was already home. Diane had gone to pick her up from school. What happened? Diane asked immediately. Why does Evan look like he just fought a boxing match? He was defending my honor with his fists, Becca explained. Feeling exhausted, Diane looked over at Evan with a sense of pride. That is my boy. Dee, please do not encourage him. I'm not encouraging him to be violent. I am just appreciating the reason behind it. That night, long after the twins were sound asleep, Becca called Julian. Garrett knows about us. How did he find out? I do not know. But he's going around telling people that I am a gold digger, that I am just using you to get your money. Julian was silent on the other end for a moment. Does it bother you? The things that he is saying? Yes. No. I am not sure. It bothers me that Evan got in a fight because of it. It bothers me that people are talking about us and talking about me. Becca, Julian said in a gentle voice, people will always find something to talk about. If you are with me, they will call you a gold digger. If you stay single, they will say you are bitter and lonely. If you date a man without money, they will say you lack ambition. There is no way to win a game like that, so you just have to stop playing. It does not feel that simple, she argued. It is exactly that simple. The only opinions that truly matter are your own, your children's, and maybe your sister's. Let everyone else think whatever they want. Somehow, that does not feel like it is enough. Then tell me, what would be enough? She thought about his question, really considered it. Tro, I want him to see me. Not just that I am with you, but that I am doing okay. I want him to know that I survived what he did, that I am a stronger person without him. Then that is exactly what we will show him, Julian said with conviction. The very next day, Garrett called again. She saw his name and let the call go to voicemail. Becca, we really need to talk. I heard that you are seeing someone. I think that is great. I truly do. I am happy for you. But I need to know if this relationship is serious. Because if it is, we need to have a conversation about how it will affect the kids, our custody agreement, and the child support payments. Please call me back. She deleted his message without a second thought and immediately called her lawyer. He is just fishing for information, Jennifer said. He is asking if he can lower the support payments since you are seeing a man with money. Is that possible? Only if you get married. Dating changes nothing in the eyes of the law, but he will definitely push it. Men like Garrett always do. So what should I do? Do not respond. Do not give him an argument. Let him worry. When we present our evidence in court, we will completely demolish him. Becca ended the call, breathing just a little easier. That afternoon, Emma got home from school with a picture she had drawn. It was a picture of their family. The drawing included her, Evan, Emma, and a tall man with gentle eyes. Who is this person? Becca asked, though she already knew the answer. It is Julian. He belongs in our family now, does he not? Would you like him to be? Yes. He's very kind, and he makes you smile. You never smile when Dad is here. Julian visited that evening. He showed up with pizza and sat down to play video games with Evan. He then carefully looked through Emma's sketchbook, taking his time with every drawing of her dragons. You have a real gift, he said to her, his voice full of genuine wonder. Do you really believe that? I am sure of it. Have you ever considered enrolling in an art program, a serious one, with an instructor? Mom says they cost too much money. Julian turned his gaze to Becca. What if I happen to know a person who teaches art to children, a person who might be looking for a new student? Julian, that is not something you have to do. I am not offering because I feel obligated, he said softly. I am offering because Emma has talent, and she should have the opportunity to grow that talent. Emma's eyes widened with excitement. For real? You would do that for me? As long as it is fine with your mother, Julian answered, looking toward Becca. Becca felt a lump form in her throat. It is absolutely fine with me. Emma threw her arms around Julian's neck and gave him a powerful hug. Thank you. Thank you so much. From over Emma's shoulder, Julian's eyes connected with Becca's. His expression was firm and certain. It seemed to say what we have is real. Do not expect it to disappear. Later, once the kids were in bed, they sat together on the sofa. They kept a small space between them, but the closeness was there. You are wonderful with them, she said in a low voice. Becca answered in a quiet tone. They are wonderful kids. I heard Evan was in a fight at school because a kid said, I was taking advantage of you. Yes, I heard about that, she replied. And you are not mad. Why would I be mad? He was defending someone he cares about. There is honor in that. But he punched another student and was given detention. Then he learned a valuable lesson, Julian responded. That is the important part. He turned on the sofa so he was facing her. Becca, there is something I have to say. A knot of dread formed in her stomach. What is it? I am completely invested. I am 100% in this with you, with your children, with everything. I realize you are waiting for me to leave, but I am not leaving. So it is time for you to choose. Are you completely invested too? Or are we just going to continue this back and forth game? A game where you pull back every time I let you get close. I am afraid, she admitted in a whisper. I understand, he said with kindness. What happens if this all falls apart? She asked. But what happens if it all works out? He replied. They were quiet for a moment in her little apartment, the sound of the dripping kitchen sink filling the space around her old furniture. Julian surveyed the room as if he were looking at a mansion. I really like this home, he said. It is small, and everything is old. This is the place where you created a new life, he said, where you raised 2 kids by yourself, where you found a way to survive. This place is amazing. At that moment, she kissed him. It was a long, meaningful kiss that was filled with both worry and optimism for what could be. I am completely invested, she whispered on his lips. I'm so scared, but I am completely invested. That is everything I wanted to hear. At that exact moment, the phone started ringing. It was Garrett, calling yet again. She let it go to voicemail. Julian gave her a small smile. Smart move. He is just going to call again, she said. Let him. You do not owe him any explanation. 2 days after that, a call came in from Patricia Sullivan. Becca was tempted to ignore it, but her curiosity won. Hello? Rebecca, this is Patricia, Garrett's mother. We have to talk. I really do not believe we have anything to discuss. This is very important. Please, I am asking you as a favor. Please. The desperation in her voice made Becca reconsider. All right, where do you want to meet? The small Italian restaurant on 5th Street, tomorrow at 12. Just come, please. Patricia disconnected the call before Becca had a chance to object. Becca looked down at her phone and immediately dialed Diane. Garrett's mother just called and wants to see me. You are talking about the woman who made your life miserable for 10 years? That Patricia? Yes, that is the one. What does she want? I have no idea, but I plan to find out. Well, I am going with you, Diane declared. You really do not need to do that. I am going. That part is not up for debate. If she starts any trouble, I will be right there. The conversation is over. So on the following day, the two of them entered the restaurant side by side. Patricia was already sitting at a booth in the corner. She appeared much older than Becca recalled, with a look of exhaustion and sorrow on her face. I appreciate you coming, Patricia said as they took their seats. What is this about? Diane asked, wanting to know the reason for the meeting. Patricia paid her no attention and focused her eyes on Becca. She looked at her with an intensity Becca had never seen before. I need to apologize to you, Patricia started. A very deep apology for all of it. Becca could only blink, completely shocked. What? I was cruel to you for so many years. I was the one who encouraged Garrett to pursue Tessa. I believed she was a better fit, with her family's money and social standing. I truly believed I was doing what was best for my son. I was mistaken. I was so incredibly mistaken. So why are you admitting this to me now? Becca questioned. Patricia's hand shook as she lifted her water glass. Because Garrett's company is on the verge of collapse. It has been for the last 2 years. The only reason it is still afloat is because of Tessa's family fortune. This wedding is not a romantic occasion. It is a financial deal. And he is deceiving them about every last detail, she said, finishing her thought. Diane leaned in closer. How did you find all of this out? Marcus shared it with me, Patricia answered. He is Garrett's partner in the business. He has been keeping records of everything out of a sense of guilt. He wants to set things right. Why is this happening now? Becca asked one more time. Patricia looked her straight in the eye. Because I saw what my son did to you, and now I see him preparing to do it to another woman who does not deserve it. I am just so exhausted from shielding him from the results of his own bad decisions. She took a thick folder out of her purse. This contains everything. It has even more proof than what you currently possess. There are financial records and copies of text messages inside. There are also emails. It is evidence of every single falsehood he told when you two were getting divorced. Becca reached for the folder, her own hand trembling. Why are you showing this to me? Because you are a good person. You deserved so much more than the way my son and I treated you. I am unable to change what happened, but I hope I can help make your future better. They sat there in the peaceful restaurant, where the very woman who had destroyed Becca's self-worth was now giving her the tools to get her justice. I am not sure what to say, Becca confessed. Say that you will make it public, Patricia insisted. Promise me you will expose him. Promise me you will not allow him to hurt Tessa the way he hurt you. Becca glanced at Diane, who gave her a strong, supportive nod. I will make it public, every bit of it. Patricia nodded and then got up from the table. Patricia, Becca said, stopping her. Will you be at the wedding? I am obligated to go. I am his mother. But I will not be celebrating. She stopped for a second. I want you to enter that wedding hall like you own the place. Because you do. You always have. You just lost sight of that for a little while. After she was gone, Diane and Becca remained at the table in silence. Well, I did not see that coming, Diane said at last. I cannot even find the words for what that was. Atonement, perhaps? Or maybe regret? Or a little of both. Becca opened up the folder and began to look at the many pages of proof. This changes everything, Becca said, her voice full of awe. This is more than we could have hoped for. So, what is your next move? Her sister inquired. Becca shut the folder and looked straight into Diane's eyes. I am going to that wedding. I will walk in there with Julian and my children, and I will remind everyone exactly who Rebecca Hartwell has become. Yes, you will, Diane exclaimed, and they celebrated with a high five over their pasta. For the first time in 4 very long years, Becca truly felt like she was on the winning side. He thinks I am the same person, she thought to herself. The woman who used to apologize just for being alive. The one who shrank herself to make him feel bigger. That woman no longer exists. 10 days before the wedding, Garrett's name appeared on her phone again. But this time, Becca picked up. Hello, Garrett. Becca, finally. I have been trying to get a hold of you. I have been occupied. Clearly. Listen, I need to discuss something with you. It is about this new man you are seeing. His name is Julian. Right. Julian, the technology billionaire. Is that the one? Yes, she confirmed. A very long pause followed from his end of the call. She could almost feel the mental calculations he was making as he reevaluated his whole approach. How long have you two been together? Why would that be any of your concern? Because if this is a serious relationship, we have to revisit the terms of our custody agreement and the child support, everything. And just like that, he revealed his true motive for calling. We will not be revisiting anything, Garrett. Becca, just be logical. If you are involved with a man who has that much money, you certainly do not need my help anymore. Actually, according to the law, I still do. Being in a relationship does not alter the legal agreement. We would need to be married for any of that to change. Another period of silence followed, this one even longer than the last. Are you thinking about marrying him? That is not your business. It becomes my business when it impacts my financial responsibilities, he said with anger. The anger inside her began to rise, slowly and deliberately. Your financial responsibilities, not your kids, not their happiness, just your money. That is the only thing that has ever mattered to you. That is not true. Is it not? You have been trying to lower your payments from the moment we got divorced. You fought me over everything, every single penny, every single weekend visit. It was never about the children for you. It was always about being in control. It was always about winning. I am getting married in 10 days, he said. Can we please not get into this right now? You are the one who called me, she reminded him. You are the one who brought this up. So yes, we are absolutely doing this now. He let out that long, patronizing sigh she remembered so well. Look, I was trying to be civil about this, but fine. I will see you at the wedding. Please make an effort to dress appropriately. I know money is tight for you, but Tessa worked really hard on this. I would hate for you to embarrass her. She should have just hung up the phone right then. She should have let it all go. But instead, she said, I will be dressed appropriately. You do not need to worry about me. Great. And Becca, I know this is difficult for you, watching me move on with my life, but I really hope we can be mature about this, for the sake of the kids. For the kids, of course, she agreed. They need to see both of their parents happy and moving on. You are 100% right. They do need to see that. So, we are good then? He asked. We are perfect. She hung up the phone and sat there in her silent apartment, trembling with rage. Diane showed up 15 minutes later. Becca had not even called her, but somehow Diane always knew. What did he say? Becca told her everything. Every single condescending word that came out of his mouth. Diane started pacing back and forth in the small living room. I want to punch him in the face. I really, really want to punch him. Get in line, Becca said. How are you so calm right now? I am not calm. I am furious. But I cannot let him see it. Not yet. Not until the wedding. Diane stopped her pacing and looked directly at her sister. You have changed. Do you realize that? 2 months ago, you would have been apologizing to him. You would have been making excuses for him, but not anymore. Now you are actually standing up for yourself. He did not give me a choice. No, Diane corrected her. You made this choice. You chose to stop letting him control you. That is completely different. They sat down together. Becca made them both a cup of chamomile tea. I need to talk to you about something, Becca said. Something that has been on my mind. Okay, this wedding, this whole plan with Julian and the private jet and showing up like I am some kind of queen. A part of me is worried I am doing it for all the wrong reasons. What do you mean by that? Diane asked. Am I doing all this to finally get my freedom? Or am I just doing it to get revenge? Diane considered it for a moment. Does it have to be one or the other? Does it not? I do not think so. I think you can want both things. You can want to be free from his control, and you can also want him to see that you are doing just fine, that you survived everything, that he did not break you. But what about Tessa? Becca asked. She is just an innocent person caught in the middle of all of this. She is about to marry a total liar and a fraud, and we are planning to expose him at their wedding. That feels so cruel. So do not think about it as exposing him, Diane suggested. Think of it as saving her, because that is what you are actually doing. You are saving her from making the exact same mistake that you made. She might not see it that way. Probably not. Not at first, anyway. But in time, she will understand. She will be grateful. Becca took a sip of her tea. It was still a little too hot. You were so full of life, Diane said unexpectedly. Back when you two first started dating, you used to light up every single room you entered. By the time it was over, you were like a ghost. I know. Do you really? Because you still sound like you believe you deserved what he did to you. The room filled with silence. Say it, Becca. Say that you did not deserve it. I did not deserve what he did, she said in a quiet voice. Louder. I did not deserve what he did. Again. I did not deserve what he did. She was shouting now, and the tears were streaming down her face. Years of rage and pain that she had bottled up came pouring out. Diane held her sister, just letting her scream and cry until there was nothing left inside. When Becca finally went quiet, her throat was raw and her face was a mess, but she felt lighter. She felt better. Diane's advice was straightforward. Good. Now hold on to that anger. Let it grow. Use that feeling when you walk into his wedding and show that man exactly what an incredible woman he lost. That night, Becca could not sleep at all. She got out of bed at midnight and moved through the quiet apartment. She began to clean everything, starting with the kitchen, then the bathroom, and the living room. She scrubbed the baseboards, washed all the windows, and even cleaned out the space behind the refrigerator. Whenever her world felt like it was spinning out of control, cleaning grounded her. She scrubbed and polished until her hands were raw and her back ached. She did not stop until the first light of dawn appeared. The apartment was spotless, and she was completely exhausted. There were still 10 more days to get through. Julian called at 7 in the morning. Did you get any sleep? He asked. How can you tell that I did not? She answered. Because I know you, he said gently. What is wrong? Becca sighed. Garrett called yesterday. He wants to discuss changing the child support agreement, now that he knows I am dating you. I am not surprised, Julian said. He also told me to dress appropriately. He said that since money was tight for me, he did not want me to embarrass Tessa. Julian was quiet for a second. Then he said, Give me his phone number. What? No. Why would I do that? Because I am going to call him and tell him exactly what I think of him, Julian said firmly. Julian, no. That is not how we are going to handle this. Becca, he interrupted, his voice firm. He does not get to talk to you that way. He does not have the right to make you feel small. Not anymore, she said. This is my fight. This is something I have to handle myself. You do not have to do it alone, he insisted. I know I do not, she answered, but I need to do it on my own. Does that make any sense to you at all? He let out a long sigh. Yes, it makes sense. But that does not mean I have to like it. You do not have to like it, she agreed. You just have to trust me. I do trust you. Completely. They stayed on the phone for another hour, talking about little things and big things. Marcus Calwell had agreed to help. He planned to be at the wedding and was going to talk to Tessa's father during the reception. He would show him all the evidence then. It was a huge risk and could easily backfire, but it was the right thing to do. 8 days before the wedding, Patricia called again. Rebecca, I'm so sorry to bother you one more time, but there is something you have to know. What is it? Garrett can tell something is wrong. He has been asking me questions about money, about the company, and about Marcus. He is starting to get very suspicious. Did you tell him anything? Becca asked. No, of course not. But he is becoming paranoid. He is watching every move everyone makes. Please be so careful at the wedding. He is going to be watching for anything unusual. I will be careful. Thank you so much for the warning. Rebecca, just one more thing, Patricia added. Yes? I am so incredibly proud of you. For standing up for yourself, for doing what is right, and for being so much stronger than I ever was. Patricia hung up before Becca could respond. 5 days before the wedding, the twins finally brought it up. Are we really going to Dad's wedding? Emma asked. Yes, we are, because he invited us, and it is important for you to see both of your parents happy. Are you happy? Evan asked. I am working on it, Becca said with total honesty. Is Julian coming with us? Yes, he is. Good. I like Julian, Emma said, nodding her head. Me too. He does not talk down to us like we are little kids. He treats us like we are actual people. Dad does that sometimes, Evan said, trying to be fair. Sometimes, Emma agreed. But Julian does it all the time. Becca felt a sharp pain in her heart. Her children deserved so much better than what they had been given. Her children, however, were resilient, capable, and good-hearted. They would be just fine. 3 days before the wedding, Becca discovered the most amazing dress. Diane insisted on taking her to a fancy shop Becca never would have dared to enter by herself. We are going to do this the right way, Diane announced, and I do not want to hear any arguments. The dress was a rich emerald green, the very same color Garrett always said made her look pale. She looked absolutely stunning. Oh, that is definitely the one, Diane gasped as Becca stepped out of the fitting room. That is it. It is way too expensive, Becca whispered back. It is perfect, and Julian has already taken care of it. What? How did that happen? He called me last week. He asked me to take you shopping and to get you whatever your heart desired. He said it was his gift. I cannot accept this, Becca said. Yes, you can. For once, stop fighting it and let someone take care of you. Becca stared at her reflection, at the woman who looked back at her from the mirror. That woman looked self-assured, strong and beautiful. For the first time in 4 years, Becca finally recognized herself. Okay, she agreed. I will take it. 2 days before the ceremony, a message from Garrett appeared on her phone. It read, Thank you for being so mature about this situation. It means a lot. The children are very lucky to have you as a mother. Becca had to read the text 3 times before a slow smile finally spread across her lips. Her reply was short and sweet. See you on Saturday. Her tone was cool and composed. He had no idea what was coming, and that was exactly how she wanted it. She thought to herself, I wasted so many years trying to be the person he wanted me to be. I never realized that I was always good enough. He was the one who was never enough. The night before the wedding, Becca felt like she could not catch her breath. At 2 o'clock in the morning, she found herself on the bathroom floor, her back pressed against the cold bathtub as a familiar tightness squeezed her chest. It was a panic attack. She tried her breathing techniques, inhaling for a count of 4, holding her breath for 7, and then slowly breathing out for 8. It was not working, Her phone was on the counter. She considered calling Diane or even Julian, but she understood this was a fight she had to face alone. It was her own fear, her own self-doubt, and her own panic that she needed to overcome. What if this whole thing was a huge mistake? What if showing up at Garrett's wedding with Julian just made everything more complicated? What if the twins were somehow hurt in the crossfire? What if she was just taking advantage of Julian's kindness? What if Garrett was right about her all along and she was only interested in money? What if she was not nearly as strong as she believed she was? What if she just plain failed? The negative thoughts began to spin faster and faster inside her head. She dropped her head to her knees and just started counting. 1, 2, 3, 4. Her phone buzzed with an incoming text from Julian. I cannot seem to sleep either. I was just thinking about you and about tomorrow. She stared at his message, her eyes blurry with tears. With shaking fingers, she typed out a response. I'm so very scared. His reply came back almost immediately. I know you are, but you are not going through this alone. I am right here. Diane is here. Your kids are here. You have so many people around you who love you and will support you. What if I am not strong enough for this? She sent back. You are strong enough. You have been strong enough for years. You just have not been able to see it yet. She wanted so desperately to believe him. Then her phone started to ring. Julian's name appeared on the screen. She answered the call. Hello? She said in a tiny voice. Hello? His voice was kind and warm. I could sense the panic in your text. Tell me what is going on. I do not think I can do this, she admitted. Yes, you can, he said with confidence. But what if... No more what ifs, he cut in. Let us focus on what we know for sure. Fact number 1, you made it through 4 years of a miserable situation. Fact number 2, you raised 2 incredible kids almost entirely by yourself. Fact number 3, you completely rebuilt your life from nothing. Fact number 4, you are the most resilient person I have ever known. I do not feel very resilient right now. That is because you are a person, and people experience fear. But being strong does not mean you are never afraid. It means you keep going, even when you feel scared. She was quiet, just listening to the sound of him breathing on the other end of the line. Tell me something, she finally requested. Anything at all. Why did you pick me? And I want the real story, not the one you tell about the coffee shop. He was silent for a long moment. Do you want me to be completely honest? Always, she answered. It is because the very first time I laid eyes on you, you looked exhausted, stressed out, and totally overwhelmed. But then the person behind the counter told a silly joke, and you actually laughed. It was a real laugh, despite everything else going on. And in that one moment, I thought, that is someone I really want to know. Someone who can still find a little happiness even when life is hard. Someone who refuses to give up. Someone who is a true survivor. She closed her eyes as fresh tears slid down her cheeks. I am such a wreck, Julian. You are a human being, he gently corrected her. That is a very different thing. What happens if tomorrow is a complete and total disaster? Then it will be a disaster. But you will handle it, just like you have handled every other challenge in your life. How can you be so sure of me, she wondered. Because I see you. I really see the true you. Not the woman Garrett tried to force you to be, and not the woman you think you should be. I just see you, and you are incredible. She managed a small laugh. That is a very big word. It is the only word that describes you. They stayed on the phone, talking until the sky started to turn pink, until her panic finally faded, and her breathing went back to normal. Thank you, she said at last. For what? For stopping me from getting lost inside my own head. Always, he promised. Now please try to get a little sleep. You have a big day tomorrow. A big day tomorrow, she echoed. She hung up the phone, climbed back under the covers, and simply stared at the ceiling. She never did fall asleep, but the crushing weight of her panic was gone. At 6 o'clock in the morning, she got out of bed, brewed a pot of coffee, and sat down at her kitchen table. The wedding invitation was still stuck to the refrigerator, almost like it was mocking her. She pulled it off and studied it one last time. No hard feelings? She read out loud, and then she started to laugh. It was a real, true laugh. Garrett had no clue of what her feelings were, because he never once bothered to ask. Diane arrived at 8 o'clock, carrying coffee, pastries, and a small suitcase. Okay, she said with a grin. We're going all out today. We're doing hair, makeup, nails, the whole 9 yards. Dee, you really do not have to do all that. Nothing is too much for a day like today. Today is the day that you show him exactly what he lost. Today, you are going to walk in there looking like a queen. I feel more like a sad clown, Becca confessed. Then you will just have to fake it until you make it. By the time I am through with you, you will feel like you rule the world. They used the entire morning to get her ready. Her hair was styled perfectly, her makeup was expertly applied, and her nails were painted a bold, deep red. When Diane was finally satisfied, Becca looked in the mirror and could hardly recognize the woman looking back. She looked confident, powerful, and unbelievably beautiful. Oh my goodness, Diane whispered in awe. You look absolutely breathtaking. I look like a completely different person. You look like you, Diane corrected. The version of you that you just forgot was there all along. The twins came home from their sleepover at Diane's house. They stopped right in the doorway, their mouths hanging open. Mom, Emma said, you look just like a princess. You look really, really pretty, Evan added with a shy smile. Thank you, my loves. Now go and get ready yourselves. We have a wedding to attend. They scampered off to their rooms. Diane helped Becca get into the emerald dress and zipped it up for her. Becca turned to look in the mirror. The woman she saw was a total stranger, yet somehow she knew her better than anyone. Are you ready for this? Diane asked. Not at all, Becca answered, but I'm going to do it anyway. That is the spirit. Julian showed up at 1 o'clock, wearing a suit that made him look like he belonged on the cover of a magazine. He stopped in his tracks when he saw Becca and just stared. What is wrong? She asked, a sudden rush of self-doubt washing over her. Is the dress not right? You look magnificent, he said, his voice full of wonder. Absolutely magnificent. The twins came out of their rooms, with Emma in a light blue dress and Evan in a tiny suit. Julian bent down to their height. You two look amazing. You look good too, Julian, Emma told him. Thanks, Julian, Evan repeated. They all climbed into the large sport utility vehicle and headed to a private airport. The twins had never been to an airport like this one. It was small and very exclusive, the kind of place where extremely rich people kept their private planes. Wow, Evan whispered. A real airplane. Emma let out a little squeal of excitement. Julian's pilot came out to meet them. He was warm and professional. The jet was not as big as Becca had expected, but the inside was pure luxury, with soft leather seats and polished wood everywhere. The twins dashed around the cabin, checking out everything, pushing every button they could find and asking endless questions. Becca took a seat by the window and watched the world shrink below them as the plane took off. Are you holding up okay? Julian asked her quietly. Ask me that question in a few hours, she said. That is fair. During the flight, Diane told one funny story after another, which kept the mood light and fun, but Becca's stomach felt like it was tied in a giant knot. In just 2 hours, she would be at Garrett's wedding. In just 2 hours, everything in her life was about to change. Julian's phone buzzed with a text from Marcus Calwell, who confirmed that he was at the wedding location with all the evidence and was ready to proceed. She would wait for the reception and tell Tessa's father everything. The plan was set, and she could not back out now. When the private jet touched down, a row of shiny black sport utility vehicles was waiting on the tarmac. Her twins were almost vibrating with excitement. Emma said, with a giant smile, "This is the coolest thing that has ever happened." Evan added, "I cannot wait for Dad to see us." A wave of sadness washed over Becca. This was not about revenge. It was about making sure the truth finally came out. It was about getting justice. She needed to save Tessa from the same pain she had gone through. It would be easy to hate her, and for a long time she did. But Tessa was just the next woman to fall for his lies. This whole pattern would just keep going until someone was brave enough to stop it. They drove down the highway toward the wedding location, a huge private estate on the edge of the city. The property was stunning, with perfect green lawns and enormous white tents decorated with fresh flowers. It was the exact kind of storybook wedding Garrett had always told her they could not afford. "Well, we are here," Diane said, taking a long, slow breath. "Yes, we are," Becca echoed. The vehicles pulled up directly in front of the main entrance. Other people arriving in their normal cars slowed down to stare. The doors of the first vehicle swung open. Julian got out first and then reached back to offer Becca his hand. She stepped out, and her green dress sparkled in the afternoon light. Her hair was done perfectly, and she kept her chin up. Diane exited the car next, with the twins right behind her. Emma gave a little wave to someone she recognized, but Evan stayed close to Becca. A ripple of hushed conversation began to move through the crowd. "Is that really Rebecca Hartwell?" one person whispered. "And who is that with her? Is that Julian Ashford? The actual Julian Ashford," another person murmured. "Did she seriously arrive on a private jet?" Becca walked forward, one foot placed carefully in front of the other. Julian's hand rested on the small of her back, a warm and comforting presence. The wedding coordinator rushed over to them, her face a mask of confusion and stress. "I'm terribly sorry. There has to be a mistake. Are you on the list of guests?" Becca gave her a calm, cool smile. "Rebecca Hartwell, +4. The coordinator swiped frantically through the list on her tablet and then checked it a second time. "Mr. Garrett only put down a Rebecca. No extra guests, no kids. There is not enough space for you at her assigned table. I do not know where I can seat you." Julian spoke for the first time. His voice was quiet, but it had a power that made everyone pay attention. "I am certain we can figure something out." The coordinator's eyes went wide as she finally realized who he was. It was impossible not to. "Oh yes, of course, Mr. Ashford. Allow me to—" "I will get something organized right away. Please, follow me." They walked behind her, into the beautiful commotion of the reception. The space was magnificent. White flowers were arranged everywhere, and crystal chandeliers hung from the tent ceilings. The tables were covered with expensive china edged in gold. It was flawless and looked incredibly costly, which was exactly the life Garrett had always wanted. As they entered, all the guests turned to look at them. The quiet talking grew louder. From across the lawn, Patricia Sullivan spotted them. All the color left her face, but then a small, real smile formed on her lips. She approached them with slow, measured steps. "Rebecca, you look absolutely stunning." Becca was completely surprised. "Thank you, Patricia." Patricia then looked down at the twins. "Hello, Evan. Hello, Emma. You have both grown up so much. You look wonderful." "Hi, Grandma," they said in soft voices. At last, Patricia faced Julian and held out her hand. "You must be Julian Ashford. I have heard a great deal about you." Julian took her hand. "I hope they were good things." Patricia's smile was now touched with sadness. It was more than he deserved. She looked back at Becca. "I'm very happy you decided to come." And before Becca could respond, she turned and walked away. Diane leaned in. "Did Garrett's mother really just pay you a compliment?" "I believe she did," Becca whispered in reply. "I think the world might be ending." The coordinator, in a rush, had managed to prepare a table for them. It was located near the back, a little bit away from the main activity, but they were still in plain sight of everyone. Becca sat and took a deep breath to calm her nerves. A few tables over, she noticed Lydia Monroe, who met her gaze and gave her a small nod of support. She had another friend here, someone else who knew the truth. It was nearly time for the wedding to begin. The guests started taking their seats. Garrett appeared at the front of the venue, making his way to the altar. He was in a tuxedo with tanned skin and perfectly styled hair. He looked thrilled and sure of himself, like a man who had gotten everything he ever wanted in life. Then his eyes drifted to the back of the room, and he saw them. A rapid series of expressions moved across his face. Pure shock, then confusion. followed by a flash of anger. His eyes locked on Julian, and you could see the moment he recognized him. Becca watched as he connected all the dots. She saw him realize what was happening, and she offered him the faintest of smiles. Garrett's jaw clenched. He quickly looked away toward the altar, but his perfect image was already ruined. Becca could see the cracks forming. The music for the bride's entrance began to play. Everyone rose to their feet. Tessa appeared at the start of the aisle, looking gorgeous and incredibly young. Her wedding dress likely cost more than Becca's car. She walked toward Garrett with a bright smile lighting up her face. Becca felt a sharp pain in her chest, but it was not from jealousy. It was from pity. This poor girl had no clue what kind of person she was about to marry. The ceremony started, full of all the usual traditions. The officiant spoke in a boring tone about love and making a lifetime commitment. Becca never took her eyes off Garrett. He kept looking back at her, then to Julian, and then to the twins. He was completely distracted and nervous. This was a good sign. It was time for the vows. Garrett's voice shook slightly as he tripped over his words. "Do you, Garrett Michael Sullivan, take this woman?" "I do," Garrett interrupted, saying the words too quickly, like he just wanted it to be over. Tessa gave him a worried look. The officiant went on. "Do you, Tessa Marie Brightwell?" "I do," Tessa said with a gentle voice. "I can now declare you husband and wife. You are now permitted to kiss the bride." Their kiss was fast and a little clumsy. The guests clapped, and Becca joined in politely. The twins were starting to get fidgety next to her. "This part is almost done," she whispered to them. "Can we leave soon?" Evan asked. "Soon, my love?" "Soon." The service finally concluded. People began to walk toward the reception for drinks and conversation. Servers were walking around with trays of champagne. Becca stood with Julian, and Diane was right beside them. The twins were happily sipping sparkling cider and nibbling on cookies. It was not long before nosy guests started to come over. "Rebecca, I cannot believe it is you. Goodness, you look amazing." "Thank you." "And who is this wonderful man?" "This is Julian." "Julian, this is... I am so sorry. Your name has slipped my mind." "Susan, we met at that Christmas party about 5 years ago." "Of course, Susan." Susan's eyes were wide as she took in every detail. From the expensive clothing and jewelry to Julian's obvious success. "So, where did you two meet?" Julian answered smoothly. "We actually met in a coffee shop." "She managed to spill an entire cup of coffee on my laptop." Susan laughed a bit too loudly. "How romantic." "It certainly was," Julian said with a smile. "It turned out to be the greatest day of my life." He said it with total honesty, because it was true. Susan quickly made an excuse and hurried off, no doubt to spread the latest piece of gossip. That same conversation happened 6 more times, with different people who asked the exact same questions. Becca managed each encounter perfectly. She smiled, chatted politely, and played her role, but on the inside, she was just counting down the seconds. Garrett finally approached during the cocktail hour. He was by himself since Tessa was taking photos with her family. "Becca, you actually came." His eyes nervously flicked over to Julian. He then glanced at the children. "I was not aware you were bringing anyone else." "You were the one who said the children needed to see their parents move on with their lives. This is part of that. I thought it was important for them to be here." Garrett's jaw was set tight. "And who is this?" Julian reached out his hand. "Julian Ashford, it is nice to finally meet you." Garrett instantly recognized the name. Everyone in their social circle did. A mix of emotions washed over his face. "How long have you been together?" he finally asked. 18 months, Becca answered in a calm voice. "The children just met him for the first time last week." Garrett looked like he had just been struck. "I see," he managed to say, his voice full of tension. "And you decided bringing him here to my wedding was a good idea?" "You are the one who sent me an invitation," Becca calmly reminded him. "You told me there were no bad feelings between us. I just took you at your word." Garrett opened his mouth to say something, but then he closed it. He tried a different approach. We have to talk about the custody arrangement and the support payments and— Not here, Becca said, cutting him off with a firm tone. And not today. This is your wedding day. You really should try to enjoy it. She turned around and walked away, leaving him standing there completely stunned. Julian followed right behind her, with the twins walking beside him. It was amazing, Diane whispered. You just left him speechless. My hands are shaking, Becca admitted in a low voice. You could not tell at all, and that is what is important. They went back to their table and sat down to wait for dinner to be served. Have you ever watched a liar's whole world fall apart? Stick around, because this story of sweet justice is completely worth your time. Hit that subscribe button and like this video if you believe the truth always wins. My part in the story began when a man named Marcus Caldwell approached our table. He was in his mid-40s, with kind eyes and a very nervous energy. He said, Mrs. Hartwell, it is so good to see you. I replied, Marcus, thank you for being here. He then shook Julian's hand. Mr. Ashford, thank you for all your help. Julian smiled warmly. Please call me Julian, and thank you for your bravery. What you are doing is not easy. Marcus glanced around to make sure no one could hear him. Tessa's father, Richard Brightwell, is here. I am going to talk to him after dinner. I will show him everything and let him decide what to do. I warned him. Be careful. Garrett is already suspicious. Patricia warned me as well, he answered. I will be, but this has to be done. He needs to know what kind of man he is getting into business with, and what kind of man his daughter is marrying, Marcus added with a firm nod. Then he blended back into the crowd of guests. I looked across the room at my ex-husband, Garrett. He was talking to his new bride, Tessa, and pointing toward our table. Tessa looked both confused and worried. She thinks I am here to make a scene, I said softly to my friend Diane. Well, are you not? She asked. No, I replied. I am here to make sure the truth comes out. There is a very big difference. Dinner was served shortly after. It was a fancy multi-course meal that likely cost hundreds of dollars for each guest. I just picked at my food because my stomach was in knots. But my children, the twins, ate every single bite. Children just have a way of being resilient. Soon it was time for the wedding speeches. Tessa's father, Richard Brightwell, who was a successful and powerful man, stood up first. He talked about his wonderful daughter, how proud he was of her, and how happy he was to welcome Garrett into their family. He also mentioned how much he was looking forward to their new business partnership. I watched Garrett start to relax a little, smiling and nodding along. He really thought he had gotten away with everything. Garrett's mother, Patricia, was the next to speak. She looked completely exhausted. Her speech was short and cold, with no real warmth in it. When families come together, we always hope for the best, she said. We hope for honesty, for integrity, and for truth. She looked directly at me when she said that last word. The message in her words was perfectly clear. After her, the best man, a friend of Garrett's from work, gave his speech. He told a few jokes that made people laugh and talked about Garrett as if he were the most amazing man on earth. I felt sick to my stomach listening to it. When the speeches finally ended, the music started for the first dance. Garrett and Tessa made their way to the dance floor. They moved together in a stiff and awkward way, like two people who did not truly belong together. I watched them for a moment, but I felt nothing at all. The sadness was gone. The anger was gone. All I felt was a strange sense of peace. I turned to Julian. Dance with me? He smiled and said, Always. We stood up and walked onto the dance floor. Other couples began to join them, and the floor quickly filled with people. Julian pulled me close, and we swayed together to the music of some forgettable wedding song. Are you glad you came? He asked me quietly. Yes, I said, but not for the reasons I thought I would be. He looked curious. Why then? Because I needed to see him with my own eyes, I explained. He is not the monster I built up in my mind. He is not the perfect man I once tried so hard to please. He is just a man who makes terrible choices. Julian smiled down at me. You are an incredible person. You know that? I answered. I am trying to believe that. Try faster, he said gently. I let out a real, genuine laugh. Across the dance floor, I saw Tessa watching us. Her expression was impossible to read. Then for a moment, our eyes met. In that instant, a silent look of understanding passed between us. We both knew exactly what Garrett was hiding, but only one of us was about to escape the nightmare. I was the first to look away. Then, I saw Marcus make his move. 20 minutes later, I watched him approach Richard Brightwell. I saw him motion toward a quiet corner, and Richard followed him closely. They disappeared into a private side room. My heart was pounding in my chest. This was the moment of truth. Julian gently squeezed my hand and whispered that everything was going to be okay. 30 minutes crawled by like an hour, then 45. To pass the time, I danced with my son Evan, then my daughter Emma, and finally with Diane. Julian kept the twins entertained all night, telling them funny stories and keeping them laughing perfectly. He was so incredibly good with my children. It felt completely natural, like he had been doing it his whole life. Finally, Richard walked back into the main room. His face was like a mask made of stone. He marched directly over to Tessa and pulled her away from the other guests. Garrett watched them go, looking confused at first, and then extremely worried. They spoke in hushed, urgent voices. Then, Richard showed Tessa something on his cell phone. Every bit of color instantly drained from her face. I could not hear their private conversation, but her utter devastation was incredibly obvious. Tessa looked at Garrett, then back at her angry father, and then at Garrett one more time. She shook her head in disgust, said something sharp, and turned her back on him for good. Garrett desperately tried to follow her, but Richard aggressively blocked his path. The two men exchanged heated words. Richard stood perfectly still, his body rigid, with pure protective anger. Garrett's expression shifted from confused to absolutely panicked in a matter of seconds. 10 minutes later, Richard took the microphone to make a sudden announcement. He apologized for interrupting the party, but said there was an unexpected family emergency. He stated firmly that the reception could continue, but the bride and her family had to leave immediately. The remaining guests gasped, and a huge wave of confused whispers filled the room. Tessa marched right past Garrett without a single glance. Her face was completely blank. You could see the deep shock, the harsh betrayal, and the total heartbreak in her eyes. Garrett tried to run after her again, but Richard fiercely blocked him a second time. Richard whispered something low and sharp. Garrett instantly turned as white as a ghost. The entire Brightwell family then rushed out together. The fancy party was technically still going, but all the happy celebratory energy was completely gone. The remaining guests shifted awkwardly in their seats. They whispered to each other, guessing what had just happened. Did the newlyweds have a massive fight? Was the marriage over before it even started? Garrett stood all alone in the center of his own lavish reception, surrounded by a crowd but utterly isolated. His mother, Patricia, tried to comfort him, but he angrily brushed her hands away. I calmly gathered the twins and told them it was time to go. They had been perfect little angels and were ready for home. Diane grabbed our bags as we headed for the exit. Suddenly, Garrett blocked our path. He hissed at me, demanding to know what I did. I stopped and looked directly into his frantic eyes. I simply told him, I just told the truth, nothing else. He loudly accused me of ruining his special day. I just shook my head with pride. I boldly told him that he ruined his very own wedding. I reminded him that he had been lying to everyone. He lied to me, to Tessa, and most importantly, to himself. I explained that I simply stopped keeping his dirty secrets for him. He glared hatefully at Julian and sarcastically asked if I really thought Julian was better than him. Julian replied with calm confidence. He said, "You deserve someone who sees your real value, whether that is me or someone else." Garrett looked completely crushed. He sadly admitted he made a huge mistake with me and claimed he finally understood. I felt a massive weight lift off my shoulders. I firmly told him, "That is your burden to carry, not mine, not anymore." He started to beg, but I cut him off. I told him our marriage was over 4 years ago and I was finally accepting it. I proudly walked away without a single look back. Julian and the twins walked right beside me, with loyal Diane following close behind. The kids chatted the entire car ride to the airport. They talked about being on an airplane, the wedding cake they ate, and how beautiful Tessa looked before she started crying. Little kids truly notice everything. I stayed quiet, just peacefully processing the dramatic night. Julian softly asked if I was okay. I smiled warmly and told him I really was amazing. Once we were settled on the plane, Emma fell asleep against Julian. Evan held my hand tightly. He quietly asked, "Did we do something bad to Dad?" I softly told my sweet boy no. I explained that we just bravely told the truth. I taught him that sometimes the truth hurts people, but it is always much better than living a terrible lie. Evan's little face was filled with worry as he asked, "Is Daddy going to be mad at us?" I knelt down and told him that his father might be upset for a little while, but none of it was his fault. I explained that grown-ups sometimes make bad choices with their feelings. Evan slowly nodded, and he seemed to understand my answer. He gave me a hug and sweetly said he loved me, and I told him I loved him very much too. Once we were finally back in the safety of our own home, I put the sleepy twins straight into their beds. They were so tired, they fell asleep almost instantly. Diane pulled me into a long, comforting hug. She whispered that she was incredibly proud of what I had done. I thanked her for always being there for me. She told me to get some rest, and then she quietly left. Julian stayed with me. We sat together on the comfortable sofa in my small apartment. The silence in the room felt like a warm blanket. He gently asked me how I was doing. I told him I felt exhausted, deeply relieved, and finally free. And being free is the most wonderful feeling in the entire world. I turned on the couch to look directly at him. I thanked him from the bottom of my heart for having faith in me. I thanked him for being so patient when I was too afraid to move on. He smiled warmly and told me I did not need to thank him. I insisted that I really did. I reminded him that he could have walked away at any time during the last 18 months. He could have decided my chaotic life was too much to handle, but he chose to stay by my side through everything. He reached out and touched my cheek, telling me I was worth staying for, and then I kissed him. It was a slow, sweet kiss, filled with so much gratitude, love, and hope for the future. I shyly asked him if he would stay the night. A big smile spread across his face, as he said he was hoping I would ask that exact question. We lay in bed together, not sleeping at first, just enjoying the quiet and the peace between us. I asked him, "What happens next for us?" He simply answered, "Whatever you want to happen." We made a promise to just take our new life together one day at a time. There would be no heavy pressure and no wild expectations. It would just be the two of us, happy. I told him that sounded absolutely wonderful. He completely agreed. I drifted off to sleep, feeling safe and secure in his arms. For the first time in 4 very long years, I did not have a single nightmare. Instead, my dreams were filled with open doors, new possibilities, and a bright future that was finally all mine. The next morning, my phone began to ring. The screen showed a number I did not recognize. I thought about letting it go to voicemail, but my curiosity got the best of me. A shaky voice on the other end asked for Mrs. Hartwell. It was Tessa Brightwell, or maybe just Tessa now. I shot straight up in bed. She apologized for calling me, explaining she had found my number in Garrett's phone. I assured her that it was perfectly okay. I asked her if she was doing all right after everything that had happened. Tessa let out a sad and bitter little laugh. She said she was not okay at all, but she was calling me for a very important reason. She wanted to sincerely thank me. She was grateful that I had exposed the terrible truth. Her father had shown her all of the evidence. He showed her the financial crimes, the secret money, and all the lies. She admitted that she had no idea about any of it. I told her I was truly sorry. She had to learn about it all on her wedding day. She replied quickly that it was much better than finding out 5 years from now, with children and after wasting even more of her life. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she admitted that I had tried to warn her 4 years ago when she first started seeing Garrett. I quietly agreed with her. I reminded her that she had not been willing to listen to me back then. She sadly agreed that was true. She confessed she had thought I was nothing more than a jealous and angry ex-wife. She then gave me a very deep and sincere apology. I told her that she did not need to apologize to me, but she insisted that she did. She admitted she had been awful to me in the past. She had actively helped to destroy my marriage, fully aware that he was a married man. With tears in her voice, she said she just did not care at the time. She had believed she was special, and that he loved her in a way that he had never loved me. I gently told her that now she understood the painful truth. She cried softly and said yes. Now she knew. She realized that Garrett does not love anyone but himself. He only uses people for what he can get from them. The moment they are no longer useful, he throws them away without a second thought. I told Tessa that I was truly sorry for the pain she was feeling. Her voice cracked as she explained that she had to go because her father's lawyers were working on getting the marriage annulled. Right before she hung up, she said something that I will never forget. She told me that I had saved her from making the same tragic mistakes that I had made. She thanked me one final time, and then the call ended. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, just holding the phone and staring into space. Julian came out of the bedroom and asked if everything was all right. I smiled and told him it was Tessa who had called. She wanted to thank me for ruining her wedding, because it had saved her from a lifetime in a terrible marriage. Julian came and sat down next to me. He asked how the call had made me feel. I told him it felt good, like a chapter was finally closed, and mostly, it was just a huge relief. He hugged me and said that made complete sense. I leaned my head on his strong shoulder and took a long, deep breath. 3 months later, my entire life had completely changed for the better. The divorce settlement was finally completed. The financial agreement was more than fair. In fact, it was much more than I had ever expected. Garrett's lawyers fought against it, but the evidence we had was just too strong for them to overcome. I finally received everything that I should have received 4 years ago. The house was sold, the hidden money was divided equally, the child support payments were increased, and we now had 50-50 custody of the children. My lawyer, Jennifer, called me with the wonderful news. She was cheering, telling me that we had won. But it did not feel like I had won some kind of prize. I just felt wonderfully free, which was so much better than winning. I was finally able to quit my second job. I stayed at my main job, but now I had time to actually live my life. I had free time to spend with my children. The twins were doing great and had adjusted well. They began to see Garrett on a regular and predictable schedule. He was like a completely different man. He was quiet, humbled, and maybe even a little broken. I did not really know, and to be honest, I did not really care. Julian was at our house much more often now. He met my family and all of my closest friends. The twins absolutely loved him. They always called him Julian. Never Dad, but he had become a very important part of our small family. I started looking for a new apartment for us. I was looking at bigger places in nicer and safer neighborhoods. I was finally able to afford it all on my own. Julian kindly offered to help with the cost, but I politely said no. I told him that this was something I needed to do for myself. But I let him know how much I appreciated his generous offer. One bright Saturday morning, I was in the kitchen cooking a big breakfast. The kids were in the living room watching cartoons, and Julian was reading the newspaper. The scene was so wonderfully normal and perfectly domestic. It was beautiful. Emma called out from the living room, asking if Julian could show her how to draw on the computer. She remembered that he had promised to teach her when he had some free time. Julian smiled and called back that he had all the time in the world. Evan looked up from his tablet and asked if we could go to the Science Museum next weekend to see the new exhibit. Julian immediately said yes and promised they would make a whole day of it. I just stood there for a moment, watching them all. My wonderful children, my loving partner, and my perfectly messy life. It was not a fairy tale, but it was mine. and that meant everything to me. Then 3 months after that chaotic wedding day, a fancy cream-colored envelope arrived in the mail. My stomach did a little flip when I saw the return address. But when I opened the envelope, it was not a legal threat. It was a final settlement offer. It contained a complete list of all the hidden assets and a proposal for a fair division of everything I had asked for. Inside, there was also a handwritten note from Garrett. The letter said that I had been right about everything and that he was truly sorry. He wrote that he did not expect me to forgive him. He just wanted me to know that he finally understood what he had done and who he had become. He admitted that he was still a flawed person, but that he was trying to be a better man for our children. He ended the letter by thanking me for never giving up on our kids, even when he had given up on everything else. I read the emotional words 2 times, then slowly put the letter down on the table. Julian was busy trying to cook breakfast. The twins were loudly arguing about who would get to use the bathroom first. I looked around my amazing new apartment. It was so much bigger and brighter, with large windows that filled the rooms with sunlight. I had signed the lease last week and we had just moved in yesterday. There were still moving boxes stacked up everywhere, but this place was all mine. Julian flipped a lopsided pancake and asked if I was okay. He was doing a terrible job cooking, but it was funny. I smiled and said yes, I was just thinking about things. He asked what was in the letter. I told him it was the final settlement offer from Garrett, and it had included an apology. Julian's eyebrows shot up in surprise. He said that was the last thing he had expected. I nodded and told him I felt the same way. He asked me gently how I was processing everything that had happened. I took a deep breath, searching my heart for the honest truth. I told him, with complete sincerity, that I no longer needed an apology from him. I did add, however, that I was truly happy he was making an effort to be a good father to our children, because that was the only thing that really mattered. Julian gave me a warm smile and said I was a very generous woman. I just shook my head and told him I was not generous. I was finally free, and that there is a huge difference. In that moment, the twins burst through the door, arguing over who got to use the bathroom first. Emma bounced on her toes and asked if they could have pancakes now. Julian chuckled and said that was exactly what he was making. Evan pointed at the stove and said bluntly that the pancakes looked really lumpy and ugly. I was about to tell Evan not to be rude, but Julian just threw his head back and laughed. He told Evan he was 100% right, but they would still taste delicious. And that was the important part. The 4 of us then sat down together at my small, wobbly old kitchen table. I knew I would buy a proper new table one day, but I was not ready just yet. This rickety little table held the story of our family and all of our memories. It is important to remember that the truth can sometimes be difficult, but it will always, always set you free. Just after we finished breakfast, Diane called me. She asked how the new apartment was. I told her it was great and that I was still unpacking, but it was already starting to feel like home. She immediately asked if I needed any help. I laughed and told her that I always needed help. An hour later, Diane arrived with coffee, donuts, and her children in tow. All of a sudden, my quiet little apartment was buzzing with energy. The kids were chasing each other, the adults were unpacking boxes, and music filled the air. It was total chaos, but it was the most beautiful kind of chaos. I stood in the middle of it all, just watching, and realized this was what real peace felt like. Then, the doorbell rang. Julian answered it. It was Marcus Caldwell, holding a bottle of wine. He said he hoped it was a good time and that he just wanted to stop by to congratulate me on the new home. I smiled and told him to please come in. I told him he was always welcome in my home. Marcus came inside, looked around at the happy mess, and smiled. He said that I did it. I had really done it. I gently corrected him, telling him that we did it and that he had been a huge part of my success. He just shook his head and said that all he did was provide the evidence. I was the one who did all the difficult work, and survived everything. We spoke for a while about Garrett's company, the fallout from his decisions, and the long road to recovery. Marcus told me that Garrett had stepped down from his position because the board forced him out. He said the company was slowly healing, but it would take a long time. He seemed confident they would make it. I told him I was glad to hear that, and I meant it. After about an hour, Marcus left, promising to stay in touch. That very same evening, Patricia called me. Our conversation was brief and a bit awkward, but it felt genuine. She told me she wanted to thank me for what I had done. I was a little confused and asked if she was talking about Garrett. She explained that while it might not seem like I helped him, I truly did. He was finally being held accountable for his choices and was being forced to grow up. I told her he was her son and that she did not owe me any thanks for that. She insisted that she did. Patricia said, I could have ruined him and sent him to prison, and I would have been completely justified. Instead, I had chosen to show him mercy, which she said was a sign of incredible strength. I was so surprised I did not know what to say. Patricia continued, saying she hoped I was happy because I truly deserved it. I told her that I was working on it. She said that was good, and then she hung up. I just sat there staring at my phone, feeling like my entire world had finally been set right. Later that night, after the twins were fast asleep, Julian and I were sitting on my new balcony. It was a tiny space, but it looked out over a park with trees and grass. I had never had a balcony before. I turned to Julian and asked him to tell me anything. He looked at me, waiting. I asked if he ever regretted getting mixed up with me and all of my drama. He answered immediately, without even a second of hesitation, that he never had, not for one moment. I pressed him, asking if that was true, even when I was trying to push him away. He smiled and said that was especially when he knew he had to stay, because that was when I needed someone the most. I leaned my head on his shoulder and breathed him in. He smelled like a comforting mix of soap and coffee, and it smelled like home. I love you, I said. It was the first time I had said those words out loud, and the first time I had really let myself believe them. He told me that he loved me too. He had said it to me many times before, but this time it felt different. It felt solid and real. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, just watching the sun go down. He asked me what I wanted for our future. I gave him an honest answer. I wanted this. Just this moment. I wanted him, the children, and a life of peace. I wanted to have normal, boring days where nothing exciting ever happened. He smiled and told me that sounded absolutely perfect. I agreed that it really did. We went inside and got into bed, ready for a good night's sleep. But right before I closed my eyes, I checked my phone one last time. I had a text message from Tessa. It said she wanted me to know that she was doing well. In fact, she was doing better than just well. She was going back to school to study art history. Her message said it was something she had dreamed of doing, but she never felt like she had the chance. She thanked me for showing her that it was possible to start over and that it is never too late to chase your dreams. I smiled and typed a reply. I told her she was going to accomplish wonderful things and that I believed in her. I set my phone down, closed my eyes, and had a sudden, powerful realization. I had wasted 4 years of my life hoping that Garrett would finally see my worth. But the truth was, his opinion of me never mattered at all. The only opinion that ever mattered was the one I had of myself. And, in that moment, for the very first time, I saw myself with perfect clarity. I was not just somebody's former wife, or a mother, or a new girlfriend. I was simply me. Rebecca Hartwell, 38 years old. I was a survivor. I was a fighter. I was a mother, a partner, and a friend. I was full of imperfections and flaws, and I was still scared sometimes, but I was enough. I had always been enough. I fell asleep with a smile on my face, dreaming of open roads ahead of me. 1 year later, I was standing in my kitchen. It was not the cramped little kitchen from my old apartment. This was a spacious kitchen inside of a real house. I had bought it 6 months earlier with the money I received from my settlement. It was my own money, which I had earned and deserved. The house had 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and a big backyard for the twins to play in. It was not a mansion, and it was not fancy, but it was all mine. The twins were in the yard, playing with their new puppy. It was a golden retriever that Emma had decided to name Sunshine. Julian was at the stove cooking, something he had gotten much better at. His pancakes were no longer lopsided disasters. Diane was at the table, setting it for a big family dinner. Everyone who was important in my life was coming over. Emma yelled from the backyard, asking when dinner would be ready. I shouted back that it would be about 20 more minutes. I looked around at my beautiful life, at the people I loved, and at my home. People often say that living well is the best revenge, but I realized that was not quite true. The best revenge was not wanting revenge at all. It was about building a life so filled with happiness and joy, a life so wonderful and complete that your past no longer has the power to hurt you. It was about understanding that the person who caused you pain no longer has any control over you because you have taken all of your power back. Garrett had sent me a text message last week. He asked if the children could come to his 41st birthday party. Of course, I said yes. They were his children too. I did not hate him anymore, but I did not love him either. The truth is, I rarely ever thought about him. He was just someone I used to know. He was the person who helped teach me one of the most valuable lessons of my life. Your value is never determined by someone who is incapable of seeing it. The doorbell rang. Julian said he would get it. It was Patricia and Lydia, along with Marcus and Jennifer, my lawyer who had become a dear friend. This was my tribe, my chosen family. They filled my home with laughter, stories, and so much love. Dinner was beautifully chaotic. The kids were all talking at once. The adults were telling jokes. Wine was being passed around, and food was quickly vanishing. It was perfectly messy and real. After we finished eating, Emma climbed onto my lap. She was getting a little too big to sit on my lap, but I did not mind one bit. She looked up at me and asked if I was happy while I looked across the room at Julian as he started doing the dishes. I saw Evan proudly showing his math project to Marcus, and I saw Diane laughing with Jennifer. I looked at my full, noisy, chaotic home. I told my daughter yes, that I truly was very happy. She smiled and said that she was too. Later that night, after everyone was gone and the children were asleep, I found myself back in the bathroom. I was sitting on the floor with my back against the bathtub, in the same spot I had been in 1 year ago, but this time was completely different. I was not having a panic attack. I was crying, but they were tears of joy. They were healing tears. Julian found me there and sat down on the floor next to me. He did not ask what was wrong. He just sat with me in the quiet. Finally, I whispered that I had made it. He nodded and said that I did. I whispered that I survived. He corrected me gently and said I did so much more than just survive. You thrived, he said. I leaned my head against his shoulder and just breathed. Thank you, I whispered. He asked, for what? I told him, for seeing me when I was not able to see myself. He replied softly, always. We sat there together on the bathroom floor in our less than perfect house with our less than perfect lives. And in that moment, I understood something. This was it. This was what I had been searching for all along. It was not about revenge or getting validation or even finding justice. It was just about peace, just love, just freedom, just being myself. And that was and would always be more than enough. So that is my story. It is the story of the day I refused to be invisible any longer. It is the day I took my own power back. If this story speaks to you, if you have ever felt small or worthless or like you have been forgotten, I want you to know something. You are not by yourself, and you are so much more powerful than you realize. If you enjoyed taking this journey with me, please press that like button. It really helps more people discover these stories, people who might need to hear them. Please leave a comment below and tell me, have you ever had a moment where you finally stood up for yourself? A moment where you decided that enough was enough? I read every single one of your comments, and I truly love hearing your stories. And if you would like to hear more stories about survival, about strength, and about getting second chances, please subscribe to the channel and make sure you turn on your notifications. I share new stories every single week about real challenges, real transformations, and real hope. Please share this video with someone who needs to hear this message. Maybe it is that friend who is going through a tough divorce, or your sister who is trying to rebuild her life. Maybe it is that woman who forgot just how powerful she really is. Your support means the world to me. Every single like, every comment, and every share helps us build this community of survivors. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for being here. And always remember, your worth was never determined by those who are unable to see it. Until next time, keep fighting, keep surviving, and keep on thriving. You have got this.